Hello and welcome to Stampscaping 101. This is a scene that I'm working on for a swap that I'm in. I'm really behind on some scenes and I'm getting started on them right now, and I was working on this scene right here that involves some other stamps from other companies, and in my private collection and my personal stamping I often use Stampscape stamps in addition to stamps from other companies. This stamp right here is by a company called Fruit Basket Upset, and I'm not sure if someone else carries their line anymore, but that's a company that used to exist in the 80s and 90s as far as I know. This guy right here is from 100 Proof Press, as is the bridge here, and that's one of my favorite companies. They have a lot of old real detailed engravings that are some of my favorite types of images. But anyways, I've used the Cloud Cumulus and the Cloud with Sun stamp from Stampscapes, and I've used it as the background here, and also something to kind of build the composition on. I have this castle coming out of the clouds, and then I've used the clouds behind it, as well as the sun. I've kind of positioned that sun right at the tip of that little part of the castle. But anyways, I've gone into this scene and I've taken two Distress ink colors, Walnut Stain and Peel Paint, and applied that down to the scene, defining my light through the use of shadow and tone. And I've applied some black ink as well over the top of it. But what I wanted to do, I got to this area of the clouds, and I thought I would use this scene as an example on how to do some additional masking of your clouds to increase the depth within that given space right here. Now I've gone in with the stylus tool, and I've taken some colors and I've darkened in some areas like this behind. You can see where I've taken a little bit of this ink and I've gone into this right here, but I've left these clouds exposed. But I mean, there's only so much you can do, and you can do a lot with this type of tool right here. But if you want to get a really crisp separation of space, you're going to have to do some masking. And what I do on the clouds, instead of cutting something out of like a frisk tape or some kind of masking, with cutting out hard paper, what I usually do is I go for a soft mask, which is paper towels are really good for. Okay, now I'm looking at these clouds right here, and like I said, I have taken and created some separation by bringing in tone, sometimes a little bit of a deeper saturated tone, and sometimes a real light tone right in the background right here. But if I want to create a real crisp separation in some of these areas, what I can do is I can just take this ripped paper towel, and I didn't rip it carefully, I just, you just go like this, and you can kind of, create kind of a jagged edge, like something like that. And look for a spot that kind of it'll match up against in the area that you want to mask. Like, let's say, for example, this cloud that's in front of this castle, there's not very much separation between that and the background. And that looks fine, but I think I'd like to take it a step further, and I'll go into it with some black ink, but why don't I start off with some lighter tone in the form of this Distress ink peeled paint, which is this green color. I kind of like that color for this scene. I kind of wanted to give it kind of an odd, I don't know what the word is, tonality to it, or hue, kind of an antiqued look. And what I'm doing is I'm blending this in from the darker edge to the inside, just like I normally do from the outside to the inside. Well, on this one right here, it's creating that space. Now that's a real super defined area, and That's almost too much, but what I'll do is I'll go back and I'll blend some of that in a little bit more, but you can see what that separation does. Right here, let's do the same on the other side. And I'll bring that right into that cloud. But you can see it's really creating that nice separation. Maybe we'll do that down here as well on this cloud. I'll find other opportunities for it. Okay, and let's see what that looks like. That looks pretty good. And let's see, how about, I see this cloud right here. Why don't I take that? Let's look for another shape here on this paper towel. How about that? I think that matches up pretty good around that outline. And I'm getting kind of close to that light source, so maybe I won't take it too dark around in this area. Okay, and again, like I said in previous videos, the brighter you want something to seem, the darker you take the areas around it. And what you're doing is you're defining light through the use of contrast. Okay, let's see here. Maybe I'll just darken up this corner right here with just some additional tone. Okay, now let's just go in and let's smooth some of these out a little bit. Some of these areas that I've defined are a little bit harsh, I think. So let's go back in and we'll kind of round out some of those transitions a little bit more. Okay. And I'm utilizing this stylus tool in its kind of its dry incarnation as far as the amount of ink that's being applied. See that right there? That's a really light and dry application, right? But I'm utilizing that more than I am, you know, right out of the pad, okay? Again, when I do that, I'm kind of on the outside edge of this card where it's going to be the darkest, okay? So don't start off inking and go right in the middle with it. Especially if you, it depends on how wet your pad is too, but always start on the outside to kind of be safe about that. Alright, going into the scene, and that looks a little bit better to me. There's a little bit more dimension, I think, happening within the clouded area. Now this is somewhat of a high contrast scene. I mean, we're talking about a lot of light tones like that, the white of the page, and we're almost, you know, I'm utilizing black on this, but you can do the same thing and have a much softer look. You can go in and mask off. Let's say if I'm going with a very light, airy sky, you can use just that masking technique, but use a light blue, and it'll be a real feathery, light look to the transitions right here, as opposed to the harder edge, high contrast ones. And I'll work on this a little bit more. As far as the scene goes down here, I need to kind of balance off the dark sky with some darker tones down here, maybe with some stronger shadows for the figure. But let's go into the you know, stay within the clouds, and there's the theme of this video here. But see where I've created this kind of harder edge, you know, around some of these areas where I've masked off with the paper towel. Let's switch this out here so you can see what I've done a little bit more. Let's go on with some pigment ink and a cotton swab. Inking up here, and let's see. I'm going to take some of that ink off so it has kind of a more of a, I'm applying in much more of a dry brush type of application of this ink. Okay, and let's soften up some of those transitions of where the cloud, in this case, the front cloud ends and the background begins. I guess you can call this somewhat of the foreground cloud right there. And I like to create that little vapor, that kind of that softer look right around the edge of a cloud. After all, clouds are made of moisture, and what you see is that moisture illuminated by light. So it's kind of like a vapor, and the use of a little bit of pigment ink in a thin layer creates a translucent layer of ink so you can see through it. And I think that's the perfect complement to the crisp impressions that you make from stamping out the image. Okay, and it kind of, like I said in the previous video, it introduces a softer element, or an element of softness, into a stamped scene, where we're always going for crisp impressions with our stamps. This is a way to go back in, introduce a texture, or a textural contrast, you can say, by diffusing some of that image in the background. Okay, and you want to create a little bit of an illumination around the light source, which in this case it's the sun. You can kind of tap around there and diffuse a little bit of that black that's on the stamp itself, right around in there. We can do that. And like I said, don't worry about trying this out, and don't worry about putting down too much. You can always remove some of it. Not often I remove just as much ink as I apply. In other words, sometimes I put down too much and it looks strange, so a lot of times I just dab it off with my finger until I get the application thickness or whatnot that I want. And sometimes you have to kind of wait till it dries too, because it might dry in a kind of a different to a different finish than what it looks like when it's wet. Alright, now see this area around the castle. I think that looks really good too, where it's kind of, that castle is kind of disappearing into the clouds. Well, now it's kind of disappearing into the little bit of a mistier cloud. You know, like that fog is diffusing around it. Okay, maybe put some of that on the tip of that castle. Anyways, there's the kind of that softer look around here, and I hope that's picking up on the video. Okay. Anyways, that's my application of clouds, shading, and kind of a masked shading, just to create a little bit more depth. Now, see, I wouldn't be able to create that crisp edge if I was just using it, you know, this tool like that. So, just with a simple technique, laying that down and just going right over the top of it. And it doesn't have to be, I mean, it's whatever, you know, wherever you want some separation, you just define it with the paper towel. It doesn't have to pre-exist in here, you know, on that cloud stamp. You can kind of create it anywhere you want. Like if I want a bit of separation right there, just go in and then lightly dab into it, okay? Don't do it with a harsh, you know, application of color, you know. Just do it, build it up lightly, and then see if you like it, and if you like it, you know, add more. And it's just as simple as that. We're just building up these areas just nice and gradually. Okay, anyways, I'll use this paper towel technique in other examples, but that's my simple application of a masked toning technique. All right, thanks for watching.